Fog by Miguel de Unamuno. That is a very fun name to say, Unamuno. Miguel de Unamuno, if you did not know, was a Spanish writer who lived from the late 19th to the early 20th century. He was also something of a philosopher. He actually wrote a philosophical treatise called The Tragic Sense of Life, which I also happen to have a copy of right here, actually. But this book, Fog, was, for the time at least, I think a very daring and experimental novel, which really, I would say, prefigured a lot of later modernist and postmodernist literature which would follow. And it's weird that you don't really seem to hear this book talked about all that much, even though it actually precedes, I think, certain more famous modernist books like Ulysses or To the Lighthouse. I believe that this was published in like 1914. Um, but again, it's kind of weird that this doesn't seem to be talked about all that much because it was kind of going places where other books and other authors had not gone before. But it is quite enthralling, I think, or so I found it to be. And I'm going to tell you all about it. So, uh, what is Fog about? Well, it has what appears at first to be a pretty simple and straightforward plot. It initially seems to be some kind of bildungsroman. It's about this guy named Augusto, who is kind of a schmuck, who falls in love one day out of the blue, and I do mean out of the blue, like he just claps eyes on this woman and he is just head over heels. He falls in love with this piano teacher named Eugenia, and he is just smitten, and he is trying to win her hand. But then he also kind of gets caught up in like a love triangle with his laundry lady named Rosario. And then it's kind of him waffling back and forth between Eugenia and Rosario. And then he gets royally screwed by the piano teacher. And then after that, he decides that he may very well want to exit the stage and may want to commit suicide. But before he does, he wants to get some advice. So he goes to see, to consult a certain writer named Miguel de Unamuno. And this is where the book gets really interesting and very, again, experimental. So Augusto goes to see Miguel de Unamuno, where it is revealed that he is a character in a book by Miguel de Unamuno. It is the fictitious character consulting and conferring with his author, his creator, his, for lack of a better word, God. And Augusto was like, I really want to kill myself because I'm just so torn up inside. But Miguel de Unamuno was like, you can't kill yourself. You're only a figment of my imagination. You will only do what I command you to do. And then Augusto was like, no, that's not true. I'm real. I'm a real boy, damn it. And Unamuno was like, no, you're just a character that I invented. And so we get this kind of interesting musing on reality and free will, but also on the nature of art. And this is some really heady stuff, I think, because once it goes full on into the metafiction, well, it kind of is metafictional from the start, but you're not really sure of just how deeply metafictional it is until you get to the end. But once it goes there, it gets very, very ponderous, but in a good way. So Augusto, he strongly proclaims that he actually does exist, that his life is real. And Unamuno is like, no, you're just a character in my book. So Augusto leaves, and he eventually dies. That's the book. That's how it ends. It's not a long book. It's actually pretty short. But that's how it ends. That is Fog. But what the real heart of this story is like I said again, it's a musing and a pretty inventive musing on reality and free will and art. Because in the conversation that Augusto has with his author Unamuno in the end, um, Unamuno tells Augusto that he's not real, he's just a figment of his imagination, and Unamuno is kind of just like dismissing him as just like, just a non-entity, literally. But Augusto says that may be the case. Perhaps I am just a character in a book of yours. But the real question is, what book are you a character in, and who is writing you? And that's kind of like the nesting doll thing, because to Augusto, Unamuno is God, right? He creates the world and the characters that people the world of the book. But like Augusto says, why do you think that the same thing doesn't apply to you? And that is to say that, are you not just a character created by God or some higher power? It's pretty interesting, even though this book is kind of whimsical. It's decidedly thoughtful, but also we get that kind of contemplation of free will, as Augusto was like, I'm going to take my own life, and Unamuno was like, no, you're not. I'm going to take your life because I'm the one who's making the rules here. And it can be kind of like unsettling, I guess, because if you kind of like put yourself in that character's position, what a horrifying thing that would be. But then again, who's to say that that isn't, or something like that isn't actually the case? Don't know, but these are the ideas that the book wrestles with. But also, the book provides a very thoughtful um, meditation on art and the legacy that art can provide to the artist. Because one thing that Augusto tells to Unamuno after Unamuno is just like, you're not real, I can do with you whatever I want. Augusto says, perhaps I'm not real, and perhaps I'm just an idea of yours, but when it comes to art, when it comes to books, the characters of the books, regardless of the fact that they are fictitious, are what ensures that the real life author uh, survives throughout time. The name of the author continues to live on. And that's true, right? I mean, the only reason why we remember the name of Shakespeare is because of Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet. These characters are fictitious, but they're the way that Shakespeare, who was real, ostensibly real, carries on. That's the only reason why we even still know the name of Shakespeare, is because of the fictitious characters that he creates. And so Augusto, in the climax of this book, is kind of like flipping the script on the author, saying, perhaps I'm not real, but the only reason why you will remain real to other people after you die is through me, your fictitious creation. And it's true. That rings fully true. It is absolutely true. That is how authors live on, is through their fictitious characters. That what seemingly has no reality is what ensures that the author's name has a lasting reality. And it's very thoughtful, and again, very true. So, yeah, that is Fog. Now, as to the technical aspects of this book, the writing in the book, it's written in a pretty simple and straightforward, but not inelegant style. It's not really doing any kind of Joycean tricks with the narration. It's written in kind of directly, but again, not inelegantly. I don't really have any problems with the writing. It's not the most strikingly written thing I've ever read, but it's not clumsy or bad, so it's fine. As to the characters are good enough, I think. Augusto is the star of the show here, and he's sufficiently rendered, I think. He's kind of a sap in a lot of ways, because he kind of allows his emotions to run away with him and get him in some kind of predicaments, as happens in the book. But also the kind of existential quandary which he finds himself caught up in the book's climax, um, is very, very understandable. It kind of harkens to some questions that we may have about our own existences in real life, and it provides a point for sympathy and relation with this character. So I think the characters are all right. And as to the story, I don't really have any complaints, because the story really does fake you out. It starts out kind of like with a forward, or like a prologue, which kind of lets you know that this is it lets you. It has like Unamuno is addressing the fact that he's writing this, but then it gets like super metafictional towards the end when he actually directly converses back and forth with his own character. And again, you don't really know exactly how metafictional it's going to get when you go into it, even though that element is still kind of there from the get go. You don't really know how pronounced it is. But I just love the fact that the story really does just fake you out. Like you think it's just this kind of generic bildungsroman coming of age thing about this guy falling in and out of love. And then it just turns into something completely different and much more radical and experimental at the end. But I just love that. I think you get a pretty good bang for the buck with this book because it packs a lot into a little, I think, and it has some really profound musings on some very important concepts and ideas, I think. And I have to say, I just freaking love this book. I thought it was so inventive and so adventurous, narratively speaking, that I couldn't help but love it. So to rate Fog by Miguel de Unamuno, I'm going to give Fog an A. I think I am. It's a fantastic book, I think. And it's so just kind of it's like a wild card. There's not a whole lot of books out there that I can say that will just kind of waylay you with the kind of what the hell that this book does in the end. But I just respect it so much because it's fun. It's kind of again it's kind of cheeky and tongue in cheek at times. It's kind of whimsical, but it's also very profound, and it has some real like heavy ideas that underlay it. But it's very engaging, and I just couldn't help but love it. I think it's a fantastic book. Yeah. So, have you read Fog? If you have, let me know down in the comments what you thought about it, whether you have agreed or disagreed with anything I've said about it here today. And if you have not read Fog, I could really recommend picking this up. I think it's again just a fantastic book and has some great ideas in it that I think will stay with you even after reading the book, perhaps. But also, the story is just so fun and engaging, and it just pulls it all off with such aplomb that I really could recommend this. I think it's a great book, and I'm giving it an A. And as always, if you have enjoyed anything you've seen or heard here today, remember to hit that like button and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, peace.